Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Truly Independent. This week's episode is going to look a little bit different. I'm Garrett Batty, co-host, and with me, actually not with me, is Darren Smith, our other co-host. He is at the Zions Indie Film Fest. This has been an incredible week. You've heard us talk about the Zions Indie Film Fest on previous episodes. Marshall and Michelle Moore are the festival owners. They do an incredible job. It has been an amazing week. And they invited us to do a live session of Truly Independent at their film festival. I happened to be during the week at NRB, which is a big convention in Dallas, talking about Faith of Angels and pitching films. And so Darren and I were not able to do an episode together. We recorded the live session at ZIFF, and that's what you're going to hear now. And then I will talk about NRB and some of the amazing things that happened there in an upcoming episode. So for now, here's Darren. Take it away.
Well, you guys are in for a treat today. Marshall and I have actually been on the Truly Independent podcast. Each time I listen to the podcast, I'm just always appreciative of the information that they share, of the insight that they just kind of open up. They really just pull back the curtains and give you some really good tips and tools on putting you in the best fast lane for success. And so we're pleased to have Darren with us today. He's going to give you a presentation, and he's going to talk about all sorts of different things when it comes to independent filmmaking and put you guys on that right course. So welcome, Darren Smith.
All right. Well, I should start by mentioning that there's normally two of us that do this podcast. Garrett, my co-host and dear friend, was at NRB this week out in Texas, and flight things got messed up, and so he's not here until later this afternoon. He will be here later today, so if you have questions specifically for him, you can ask him when you see him. Thank you guys for being here early. This is awesome. And this is also our first ever live show. We talked about doing this last year when Marshall and Michelle, I think you guys were like episode 4 of the podcast, so very early in the journey. Let me give you a little bit of background and then what we're going to talk about, and then the last half or so will be Q&A. You guys are lucky because you'll probably get your questions answered. Okay, so my name's Darren Smith. I'm an independent film producer. Done 4 feature films. Before that, I did 4 seasons of television. I produced Garrett Batty's last 2 features. So Faith of Angels, that was here last year, and The Carpenter, that was here in 2023. So we've had a fun run together. And last year, we put both of those films in theaters. We kind of self-distributed along with Purdy Distribution. And we decided we needed some mechanism that was going to help us get awareness for the films that were coming out. Because yes, we both have small online followings, but it's not like we could reach 1 million people for free. So we said, well, let's do a podcast, because we could demystify the indie film journey. We could talk about what we're doing to release these films in real time. And that was kind of the impetus for the show. It was really going to be the two of us. I mean, we'd bring guests in, and then we've loved bringing guests in. We've had people like Stephen Follows and Jonas Barnes and some really great, Giles Alderson, and like some really great filmmakers all over the world that have been on the show. So it's been a ton of fun. If you're not subscribed, you can do so now. Truly Independent on all your favorite podcast players. Okay, so today, Garrett and I were talking throughout the week, like, what are we going to talk about? What's the topic for today? And I was here Monday and Tuesday and got to see some short films, got to see some features, and really got to connect with some of my friends here at the festival. I've been coming to this festival since 2012, which was, I think, year 7. Does that sound about right? I don't know when it started. Do you know the year?
It started.
It was the 24th, so you do the math. But 2012 was the first year I was here. Back then, they did a 24-hour film festival. And my then business partner, Alan Seawright, and I, we made a little short film called Cold Case, or Warm Case, which is a parody of The Cold Case, kind of like detective thriller things. And that same year, a young filmmaker named Garrett Batty made one. I forget the name of his, but he was just telling me that like that was the year that we both kind of met each other, 2012. It was the one time I did something, I shouldn't say one time did something I was really proud of, but like I was really proud that we beat out Garrett Batty. So our film took first at the 24-hour film fest and his took second. But as we were thinking about and talking to each other about what do we want this episode to be about, the more I was talking to filmmakers out in the lobby and in between films, the more I realized that figuring out how to leverage your current project or your current situation in film to get the next thing would be super helpful. And Garrett politely reminded me that this is not a show where we tell you how to do things, because we don't know how to do things, right? No, like the William Goldman quote, nobody knows anything in Hollywood. And so I'm going to do my best to share my experiences and our stories that we've had over the years. But I'm also a producer, and my job is to solve problems and give answers to things. So it's just my nature. If I tend to tip over into that side of things of like being prescriptive, just know that there's a story and an experience that is behind that. Okay. So with that said, I would like to start with Garrett's thoughts on specifically how he has leveraged short films that he's made in the last 20 years or however long we've been doing this thing in order to get the next thing, right? So it's rare that the short film is the thing. It's always, if you think of it as leverage, if you think of it as a point where you could put a lever in and put some effort into it or exert some leverage, it can get you some momentum into the next project or to connect with the next person. So he has 3 experiences he wanted to share. So I'm going to share these with you first, and then I'll share a couple of my experiences of how I did short films and leverage them to get the next thing. So experience 1 from Garrett. My first short was a 24-hour film competition with Matt Mattson and Jake Swazo at the 7th annual LDS Film Fest, now Zion's Film Fest. Were you there? Yes, I was. That's the one I was telling you about. So he said, I leveraged that film into doing a longer film with Matt and a TV pilot with Jake. A short film is as much about the story as it is about building the team to make future projects. So that was his big takeaway from that one, is you can use short films to work with an actor, a producer, a director, a writer, a cinematographer, an editor, a musician, a composer, like whatever crew position that you're thinking, and I'd really love to explore what working with them would be like without the full commitment of like 6 months of time and tens of thousands of dollars. The short film's a great way to do it, right? Because you can say, look, I like your music, but I don't know if you're quite ready for feature film length, but let's do a short. Let's do an 8 or 12 minute short together and see how the cinematography pans out, see how the music pans out, see how the editing comes together or the visual effects. So that's one way you can leverage a short film. You can look at who can I collaborate with that's not my normal people, that you can get kind of outside of yourself and go, ooh, I loved what they did on that short film I saw at Ziff. I'd love to talk to them about doing a 1-day or a 3-day shoot together, right? His second experience, he says, I use short films to test story concepts or camera techniques. I did a short film, and one of the key reasons I did it was to learn how to shoot the scene consistently over time. So he intentionally stretched one scene into a multi-day shoot just to learn how to shoot the same look over a longer period of time. Taught me a skill that would be used for future features. So this was him as a writer-director looking at, what do I not know how to do yet? What are the skills that I feel like I should have if I wanted to do a feature version of this story that make me a little nervous? If the third one, he says, I was asking him to go into more detail about that. He said, look, I've done short films I wrote a short to shoot at night because I'd never done a night shoot. I didn't know how I would feel. I didn't know how it would work. I didn't know how people would like it. So I intentionally wrote a short so that we could film it at night. And he's done them. He did another one to test out a camera technique, like an in-camera freeze where all the actors froze and then the camera's moving through them. And he's like, I've never done that, but I wanted to figure out how to do it. So I called a buddy and I called some actors and we went and shot a scene. It never saw the light of day, but we just went and shot it. And we all got the experience of what that was like. And so he uses short films to test story concepts or camera techniques. So the things that he was uncertain about as a director, he would go out and intentionally write, because he's a writer, director, producer, so he could do all those things. But if you're a director, find a writer and say, what's something you've always wanted to try and see how it looked on screen? Or go to them and say, I really want to test this thing out. How would you feel about writing me a scene? And that's a great way to test out new collaborators, going back to tip 1, and to use that to expand your skill set. So the last one he shared was tip 3. I made a short film as a proof of concept for a larger feature. I had already written a feature-length script, but funding was not available yet. Our executive producer wanted to pitch the script to Hollywood. We persuaded them to film some of the key moments for a short. They paid for the short and loved it so much that they ended up funding the full feature themselves. That film was released on 500 screens. That was The Carpenter. The short was a successful proof of concept that instilled confidence in our executive producer and us that we could execute this movie. We used shorts as proof of concept for fundraising or problem solving. So these are the ones that Garrett asked me to share to the group today. And I was part of that as well. So when Garrett called me and said, hey, I'm doing a movie and it's in Cape Town, and we've never been there, we've never filmed with these people, we don't really know, but it's going to be a blast. I said, absolutely, send me what you've got. And he sent me the script, but he sent me this short, like 8-minute teaser. And I was blown away with what they pulled off with just a couple of days filming in the middle of COVID. It was like summer of 2020. They went down to, I think, Capernaum Studios in Texas, where they filmed The Chosen, because they were also exploring that as a filming location. So he's hitting a couple of these tips in one proof of concept. Can I work with these actors? Can I work with this time period? Can this action work on a budget? And does this studio make sense? And ultimately, we decided to film in Cape Town because the cost for a month of filming there on a set that existed out in Durbanville, I think, or something like that. The cost for a month of that set was cheaper than a day renting Capernaum Studios in Texas. And so talk about leverage and talk about figuring out how to find ways to leverage your film to get the next thing. We learned a lot on that one. I wasn't involved in the short film. I came in after when we were doing the feature, but he's living proof that these tips work and help you move those things along. So some stories or experiences from my own life. I've never liked director's chairs. They're always like, how do you sit in it? How do you get comfortable? Anyway, that's why I'm a producer. I have a producer chair that I bring my own chair, and it's very comfortable. It rocks back and forth, like it's a whole thing. Okay, so it's a couple of experiences of my own producing short films. Honestly, the ones that gave me the most leverage were not necessarily the traditional short films that you'd see at a film festival like this. I had a lot more experience doing music videos. So I came up through post-production sound and live sound. So I toured with Neon Trees and Imagine Dragons. I ran sound at Velour for 10 years down in Provo. I was like their head sound guy for a decade. And I met so many amazing people there. And then during that time, started getting into film. So I started in post-production sound, and then I started writing with my business partner, Alan. And then I started filming and editing and doing all the things because it was just the two of us, this little boutique film production company. And so between the two of us, we did probably a dozen short films and worked with people like Imagine Dragons, like Neon Trees. We did a documentary for Neon Trees that started out as a short thing that we filmed in there. You remember the old Hollywood video that was by Smiths? It doesn't exist anymore, but we're talking like 2010, 2011. There was a Hollywood video there that they rented out and was like their practice studio. And so we went over a day and filmed a whole bunch of interviews and filmed some B-roll and put it together, and that kind of greenlit the documentary that we did for them. It never ended up coming to life, so you can't find it anywhere online, unfortunately. But music videos. I did music videos for like Gentry and Faith Marie and The Strike, a bunch of local bands I worked with. There was a show called The Occidental Saloon, which was made by Matt Easton, who's now directing like all of Imagine Dragons music videos for the last 10 years. He started, and I was the sound person that was recording the live sound on those as these little free acoustic music videos. He'd get Imagine Dragons before they were big, before anyone knew who they were. They were playing at Velour down in Provo. And it said, hey, let's go out to a barn in Payson and film an acoustic version of It's Time or whatever. And so we'd all go, they'd bring the cameras, I'd bring the sound, we'd record it, we'd do all the things. And Matt turned that into a TV show called Audio Files, which I was then also the sound person on. So the same thing applied in my own life. I was producing and even directing a couple of music videos for local bands. And so like I did one for Gentry, and it was a Christmas themed, like a Christmas time music video. The thing did 200 million views across YouTube and Facebook. So, you know, whether the thing gets 10 views or 200 million views, it's the same level of work for me as the filmmaker. But I tried to align myself with people that I already saw some trajectory on. So we did music videos for them. I did like 3 or 4 years in a row, and their music videos would do tens of millions of views. So I could then put that on my blog or my website and go, here's a music video I produced and directed. And then there it is. It's got 200 million views on it. So that's impressive. I did one for Faith Marie. I did 2 of them, actually. One in a little indoor space, but I did one that was, the Heber, is it Heber or Midway, that has the water in like a little volcano thing. What do you call it?
Midway.
Yeah, it's Midway, but what?
Homestead Crater.
Homestead Crater, thank you. So we filmed it in there. It was me, a camera, and her, and a piano. That was it. And I filmed and edited the whole thing myself, like directed, produced, shot, edited, did the whole thing, right? It cost $0. Maybe they paid me $1,000 or something just because I had to drive out there and do the whole thing. But that thing has now done like 6 million views. And I can say that was completely me. So if I were today trying to do cinematography or editing or directing or producing, I could say, look, here's a thing I did 100% myself, shot it in 2 hours, edited it in a week. And here's what I could do for no budget. Imagine if I had 10,000 or 50 or 100,000 for a video. They would look at the results and go, that was a good video, and it had 6 or 10 or 100 million views. And they go, yeah, I trust you. So what's the lesson in there? I think part of it is, what's your takeaway? But for me, it was, I could do the same video for someone who's just starting out and may not be a band in a year because they just won like Battle of the Bands. They're all going to get married and go off to, move away for different jobs, and maybe they won't be a band anymore. But there were also bands like the National Parks and Desert Noises and Beyond Trees and Imagine Dragons, and people that just had that feeling of they're going to be around for a long time. You could tell even when they were a year old as a band, this band is going to do it. And so I'd align myself with them and go, I want to kind of hitch myself to this train and provide value as a filmmaker and say, I'm going to produce a music video for you. And then you're either going to pay me or I can use it to get another project. So part of it is thinking about who you're partnering with. The other thing I wanted to share, let me check my time real quick. Yeah, we still got great. The other thing that I experienced was when I was working on the TV show, there's a show called Relative Race for BYU TV. And that was a great experience because as a producer, I could get a lot of reps doing 10 episodes a season. That's 10 complete stories and 10 complete thoughts that I had to produce every season. And imagine doing 40 episodes or 40 feature films in a span of 3 years. You can't do that. But you can get your reps in as a producer doing TV or doing short films because they take, for us, it was a day of filming per episode and then about 3 to 4 months of post. And I was able to edit because I had the ability to edit as a producer, or I had the experience and the skill to do that. And so I got to see the full thing from like the inception of the story in my head of like, how's this play going to play out, to filming it, to editing it and getting it done. So reps is a cool thing to think about. But also during that, I was posting about it a lot. So this is maybe a big takeaway for everybody is the more you talk about what you're doing, the more people can see that you're up to something. And people like to partner with people that are up to something. If you've met people here that are, you've probably seen them 2 or 3 years in a row and they're still working on that one project and they still have that idea and they're still tinkering with it. And you're like, okay, cool, man, good luck. But then you meet people last year who were like, Graham, right? Like I talked to Graham in October and he's like, yeah, I've got this film that I'm doing and I'm raising money right now. And he was like getting after it. I just saw him this morning and he's like, it's done, it's in post. Holy cow, dude, that's not even 6 months. So he's up to something, right? Find the people who are up to something. But as I was talking about and posting about the work I was doing on Relative Race, a friend of mine who had been involved with us a little bit as far as our production company in like sponsoring our Patreon and some of the web series and stuff we were doing. She calls me up and says, hey, I got this guy, I want to fund a TV pilot. So will you executive produce it? Will you put it together? I was like, yeah, absolutely. So filmed the season in April, and then in May, we're shooting this TV pilot. And it was because of these little things that I was doing, saying, look at the value I'm creating over here for this TV show. I could probably create similar value for you over here with a TV pilot. So it's a little bit of a jump or a leap in trust from a TV show that's existed for a couple of seasons and I'm just part of a big team to like, can you do it 100% yourself? But it was enough for her to be like, I think you're the person for this. So I did that. And then her business partner called me and said, hey, I saw the work you did on that. I've got a documentary that I'm doing here locally. I need a producer. Are you interested? It's like, yeah, absolutely. So over that summer between seasons, did a documentary project with Amy Redford, who ended up calling me 6 months later and said, hey, I've got a feature. I'd love for you to produce it. I said, absolutely, I'm in. I don't care what the movie is. I don't care what the budget is. Like, I'm in. But it was all these little steps, these little progressive steps that led from a TV show to a TV pilot to a documentary that had a decent budget to producing my first feature. Now, it took me, I talk about this a lot. You may not have heard me talk about it before, but it took me 12 years to produce my first feature. That's too long. I don't want it to take 12 years for anyone in this room, okay? So the rest of the time we'll talk about like how do we help you make progress and move forward. But I do want to share this one principle. I shared it last year in a workshop that I did here at ZIF, but the idea and what I just kind of showed you with my own trajectory was this idea of the domino principle. You may have heard this before, but the domino principle states that a domino, like a 2-inch domino, can, if you knock it over, it can knock a bigger domino up to 1.5 times its size. So a 2-inch domino can knock over a 3-inch or whatever the math looks like. And then a 3-inch can knock over a 5-inch, which can knock over an 8, and it just keeps compounding, right? But if you start, there's a video online where this scientist, this like high school math teacher who's a little pudgy and he's got like curly hair and he's like super into science. He's like, watch this. And he takes a 5 millimeter tall domino and he grabs it with a pair of tweezers and he puts it down on the ground in front of this ever increasing 1.5 times its size and weight series of dominoes. And by like the 13th domino, it's a 6-foot tall domino that weighs 100 pounds. And he starts with this little 5 millimeter domino and he knocks it over with the tweezers and it goes ding, 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 boom, and it knocks over the 6-foot tall, 100-pound domino, which is insane to think that from a 5 millimeter domino that you couldn't even see from the room back here knocks over something that big. And I love that analogy or that principle for filmmaking. Because wherever you're at right now, it represents one of those dominoes between 5 millimeters and 6 foot tall. And maybe you're on the 4.5 foot tall domino that's 50 pounds or whatever the math is. Maybe you're one domino away from that big feature, the dream project that you're going after. But maybe you're at the 5 or 7 or 10 millimeter domino. And that's okay. We all start with the 5 millimeter domino. We all start by getting our phone out or a camera out and filming something and go, ooh, I think I like this. I think, and I showed that video to somebody and they went, wow, that's really good. Dink, that's one domino. Okay, well, let me string a couple of shots together and add some music to it and put it on social media. Wow, it got a couple likes. It got some people commenting on it. They said, that was really good. Dink, it's another domino. And it just builds and builds and builds as you build that momentum. And so if you think about it that way, it requires a couple things from you as the filmmaker. One is an understanding of what domino are you at? How big is it? The next is what's the next one? Because it would be really tragic if you had like a 2-foot tall domino and it just went to the ground and there was nothing to capture that momentum and propel it into the next one. So always be thinking about how does this short film, how does this project get me the next one? And what is the momentum that I need to carry into that one so that it knocks the next one and the next one? And then the third thing you need is what's the 6-foot tall, 100-pound domino? What is that for you in your career? Is it a $2 million feature? Is it a studio movie? Is it directing for Netflix? Is it whatever it is? That might be the thing that feels impossible because you're sitting at a 1-inch tall domino and knocking down a 6-foot tall one feels impossible. I know that feeling very well. I sat there for 12 years going, I'm doing everything I can. Why isn't it working? Well, it's because I didn't do the stuff I just told you. I didn't realize I needed to line up the next domino so the momentum happened. I didn't know that I needed to have the big goal at the end. And so it was almost like I was knocking a domino this way and then trying another one this way and then trying another one this way and going, why isn't it knocking over that domino? Well, if you look at it from a scientific point of view, you need that directionality. It needs to all line up into one series of ding, 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 boom. Okay, so that's what happened to me, and it turned into the first feature, which turned into the second feature, which turned into the third and fourth. So every project that I've done, from music video 15, 20 years, whatever years ago, all the way to now, I could directly apply that domino principle to it. So wherever you're at in your filmmaking career, think about what's the next domino and what's the big one that you're aiming for, so that you can make sure that every time you do a project, it gives you that momentum in the next one. Okay, so with the rest of the time we have, I'd love to do Q&A. So we'd love, just because we are filming and recording this, we'd love for you to use one of the microphones. I don't know if there's someone that maybe wants to hand them around, or if you just want to pass them around between you, but there's one on each side that we can use. They're wireless microphones, and we'll just do some Q&A until Michelle tells us we're done. Howdy, tell me your name first.
Yeah, I'm Dukon Williams. I'm a filmmaker.
Yes, we met the other day.
Yeah. Thanks for everything you shared, first of all. This is awesome. And for including Garrett when he couldn't be here. And you could have looked better than him, but you didn't. That was very sweet of you.
We put his face on the bear.
Yeah, no, it was nice. So my question was, when you're talking about the domino principle, just so I understand the full principle, could you share where you're at? What is your 6-ton domino you're trying to knock over, and where in that journey do you feel like you are?
Yeah, thank you for asking, because now I get to talk about myself. So I've done 4 features in the last 3 years. Between 2021 and 2024, I did 4 features. And every single one of them, I was a work for hire. They had the money raised, they had the project developed, they were ready to go, and they needed someone to come in and produce it, because now they were going to shift into director mode. And so I did that, and I loved it. And the projects, I'm really proud of all the projects we did. 3 of them have been released in theaters. The first one that we did with Amy went to the Toronto Film Fest and got bought by IFC Films and had a small weekend release, and now you can watch it on Hulu. We did the whole thing, right? So it's been an amazing journey. But I realized along the way that there were things that I would have done different. And so I was just kind of taking notes, because I didn't want to be so arrogant as to think I should be making the decisions now. Because it was my first, second, third feature. I didn't know anything. By the time I was working with Garrett, he'd already done 6 movies and I'd done 2. So it's let me learn everything I can learn from everybody. But by the time we got through 4 of them, and then also releasing those 2 movies last year, it's man, I feel like if I had more control over the entire process, we could make it more profitable, more streamlined, more upside, more all those things. So I started 2 years ago, started noodling with what would that look like if I were to do it all? If I were to basically become a mini studio as a single person. What if I bootstrapped a studio instead of going out and raising tens of millions of dollars to start a studio? What if I bootstrapped it, meaning started with nothing and just used the resources I had at my disposal? So that led me to come up with what I'm calling Producer Fund 1. So I'm raising a film fund to do the next 10 movies, and it's a $10 million fund. So I'll do 10 movies in 4 years, 2 to 3 a year. They'll all be little indies between $1 and $2 million, but we're going to handle everything from development, financing, pre-production, production, post-production, marketing, distribution. We're going to handle the entire thing. It'll start, like I said, bootstrapped. I'm not going to hire 8 employees to handle all those different things. We'll contract people, and we'll do it on a contract basis until it's profitable, and then we'll bring people in-house and we'll build this thing from the ground up. So I'm really, really, really inordinately excited about that, because we have investors in already. We're probably, our first milestone will be in the next month or so, and I can start greenlighting projects. So that's kind of my next thing. I don't know what the big, you said 6-ton, I was just thinking 6 foot. You're thinking way bigger than I am. I don't have aspirations to do the studio system. I really, our podcast is called Truly Independent. That was a phrase I came up with a year or 2 ago, and I was like, Garrett, this is what this name is for. I don't know why I was hanging on to it and using it all the time, but that this is why. Because we need to be truly independent. We need to figure out how to do that, so we're not waiting for permission, so we're not waiting for a green light or a gatekeeper to say yes. We can just do it ourselves. And that's why we have the podcast, and why I'm writing about all this stuff in books and blogs and podcasts, because if I can share everything I'm learning along the way, then it means that everybody else who's paying attention can also apply the same lessons. And hopefully Truly Independent becomes even bigger than the studio system, right? I don't care if it does, but it has a chance of somebody overseas could read the book or listen to the podcast and go, oh, I think I could try that myself. And now they're thinking about greenlighting themselves instead of waiting for permission.
Thank you, Darren.
Thank you.
I've been blessed by it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Let's get Doug over there. Doug, I love your short film.
Oh, that's so nice.
Daughter of the Plains. Who else saw that? Was that Tuesday? Yeah, half the room. Dude, great job.
Well,
really good.
That's very humbling. Thank you. Thanks for doing this, Darren.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really fantastic. I wish Garrett were here as well, but
Yeah.
you've done a great job solo.
Thank you.
So I love this domino analogy that you're talking about, and the only problem is I know what the 6-foot domino is, right? But I'm not sure what the dominoes in between, say, Daughter of the Plains and the 6-foot domino is. I mean, it would seem to be, make more movies short or long, but is it that simple, or what are the next steps for, a project like ours, or like many of the others, for people who have maybe 2 shorts out there, or what have you?
Yeah, I think there's 2 ways to look at it, and I'm glad that you're already kind of in the mindset of what do we do next. Like, instead of waiting for how does this turn into this external to me, it's like, how do we turn this into that, right? That's a very small shift in words, but it means that you're thinking internally and taking the responsibility on yourself rather than who is going to green light my next thing, right? That's big. So 2 things. The first is understanding, like, what is the 6-foot thing and what needs to come right before that. You kind of reverse engineer what the next domino is in order to find out how many dominoes away you are. And you may or may not be right. Maybe you're 5 away, maybe you're 2 away. It's really hard to know for sure. This isn't science, this is art still. And so there's nothing that says, as soon as you've done 3 short films, now you get to do a feature. That doesn't exist, right? We all wish that were the case, but I mean, I met a kid, I did a workshop or a guest lecture at UVU a few weeks ago. There was a kid in this class that had done 52 short projects. It's like, holy cow. And he's just getting his experience and getting his reps in, but I'm like, you're definitely ready to do whatever the next big thing. Like, you've earned it, right? So it's twofold. One is, you've got to put that out into the world as much as possible, because that's where serendipity or grace or luck or whatever it is that you call it, I like to call it grace, comes into play, right? Short example, I was posting a picture every day from set on the second movie I did. It was a movie we shot here in Utah called Give Me Your Eyes with Gary and Julie Arbach. And I was just posting a picture from set every day, basically showing people online, look at the value I'm managing or creating for other people. I've got a crew of 30, 40 people. I've got these big cameras. I've got all these heaters because we're filming in Provo Canyon at 3 degrees at night in February. Why? Because that's where it takes place. But I'm going, look at this value I'm creating on this project. And I'm doing it every single day for 30, 40 days. And a week after that, Garrett called me up and said, hey, you've been doing a lot of producing lately. Yes, I have, right? At least it looks that way. And that's when he called and he said, I got a project. I said, yes, whatever it is, yes, right? I didn't know it was the carpenter. I just said yes. And because I wanted to work with Garrett. But part of that was because I was taking it on myself to make sure that what I was doing was getting as much exposure as possible. And even though I was working 16-hour days as a producer, I would still take the time to take a really nice photo, put a caption on there, and like shine the light on the cinematographer or the hairdresser or the costumer or the transpo people or whatever to say, I've got an amazing crew. I'm managing all of this. They all like me because they're letting me take their picture. Like, all that subtext is part of that. So Jade's not here, is she? Jade did an amazing job on that for you because she was just posting every day. Here's the thing. Here's behind the scenes clip. Jade's really good at it. Probably better than I am because she's doing like edited videos every day. I'm doing a black and white photo that took me 4 seconds. Oh, got one for today, right? So a lot of awareness, because you never know what's going to happen. Me posting 40 pictures on the internet led to 2 movies with Garrett Batty. Yes, there's a lot of other things, like I needed to be showing the kind of value that he was already looking for and have that connection from years before and. But you'll never know what opportunities can pop up unless you're doing that. So the awareness piece of, you got to be posting about your project every day somehow, really important. So for you, it's how many other festivals have you applied to? Can you get it into another 5 or 10 festivals and get hundreds of people every single time to go see it and talk about it, write up about it? Who knows, maybe at the Nebraska Film Festival, you're going to meet somebody that like really resonated, is looking for someone to direct a feature. You never know. I don't want to put that in your mind of like, that's the path, because you never know. Serendipity, grace, luck, it pops up when you least expect it, but it's because you've been doing all those things to be in a place where you can receive it. The second is being really specific about the goals that you're after. So what's the what's the 6 foot, 100-pound domino? And like I was saying earlier, just reverse engineering. So in order for me to do that, what kind of value do you need to show people that you're capable of creating for them to trust you to do the next domino? That's kind of what the momentum looks like. So doing a short film that's, I don't want to throw budgets out in the world in the air because I don't know what the budget was for you, but like, what it was. Jumping from this isn't specific to your project, but a $1 or $5 or $10,000 short film to a $1 or $2 million feature film, that's the 1-inch domino to the 6-foot domino, right? That's too big of a gap. So what kind of value do you need to create for the people who have the demand for a screenwriter, a director, a producer, an actor to come to the next domino? That's what you got to be thinking about. Hopefully that made sense. I haven't phrased it that way before, but like, know what the end goal is and then reverse engineer it to say, okay, what's 80% of that? What's 80% of that? What's 80% of that? And at some point you'll be like, oh, that's where I'm at right now. And it's not just budget-wise. I like to think of it in terms of value and demand. So what's the value that you're supplying to the industry and what demand already exists in the industry? Because all of us, how many have multiple ideas for projects in your brain right now? If someone said, I have money, you could supply it, right? We have an oversupply of ideas and creative projects in this room. And so does every other film festival in the entire world. There's an oversupply. So what we need to understand is what demand already exists and seeking that out, and then understanding, okay, what is it that they're actually looking for? Because there certainly have been filmmakers who have, been brought to that next domino because some person added their momentum to the momentum that they were knocking over with their domino, their short film, that said, oh, you're ready for this. Or like a production designer on a feature or a studio movie that then gets to direct the next one, even though they haven't really directed before. Because the studio is going, we're going to add our momentum to this to bring you to that next one. So really thinking of it very intentionally, like what that looks like for me is sitting down with a 2-hour block of time that's uninterrupted, phone off, door closed, no kids are running into my office, and putting on some music and just getting into a zone where I can really think about what is the next thing? What's the big thing? And then free writing. Like, what does it look like? Describe it in super detail. Oh, in order for that to happen, this has to happen. Oh, let me do some budgets. Let me do some diagrams. Like I have notebooks full of those kind of sessions. So I just sit down and I think about it and I let, the grace of that moment show up and give me some extra momentum too, because my thoughts are great, but there's other, we're at Ziff, right? So God has a bigger plan and a bigger vision of your life than you do. And so if you tap into that when you're doing those planning sessions, that's where the magic happens, at least in my life, where I go, oh, I didn't even think about a film fund. That's a big idea. Maybe I should write some more and figure it out. Okay, sorry, that was a super long answer. I want to get to other questions. We still have like 15 minutes. So, Graham. Yeah, microphone. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So when you go to film festivals and you meet with other creatives and whatnot, it's usually, you usually find, now I'm speaking in generalities here, but you usually find writer, producer, directors in one, right? Or you find directors, or you find writers. You rarely find producers by themselves, right? And usually the writer, producer, directors would rather be writer, directors, and they tack on producing because they have to, right? So what is the appeal for becoming a producer of independent films? And how do you convince yourself or others to become producers of independent films so that, the writers and directors can be matched up with people who just produce, or, I don't know, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a really cool question. I consider myself a producer writer, so I don't know that I'm like the perfect example of what you're talking about, but I certainly know what you're getting at. Every project needs momentum, right? This is domino theory again in practice. So every project needs momentum if it's going to get anywhere. And so a lot of times what happens just by the natural state of things is someone has an idea that they want to produce, whether they're an actor, a writer, or director, and they go, well, I can sit here and wait for a producer to show up, or I can keep going to festivals or keep DMing people online, but there's not enough demand from the producer to say, yes, I want to invest my time, energy, money, attention into this project for you to have the momentum you need to get it made. And so that's where a lot of people sit, is they go, well, I'm a writer, director, or I'm a director, or I'm an actor, and nobody's saying yes to me. There's not enough demand for the oversupply that I have of good ideas. So they tack on the producer title because they need the momentum. I was sitting here with an actor friend Tuesday night. We were sitting on a bench out there, and I said, what are you up to? And he's like, it's been pretty slow. I was like, well, what do you want to do? Like, you're a really talented actor. What do you want to do next? Like, what's a scene or a character or a shot that like just has you obsessed? He's like, I don't know that I've ever thought about that. It's like, well, what if you kind of look at what actors do when they get big, right? They have a big blockbuster movie, or they get into the studio system. Margot Robbie and Ryan Reynolds come to mind of like, they're people who have created their own production companies to say, I'm only doing the projects I want to do. So Margot Robbie says, I want to do Barbie. She goes and acquires the rights to it, talks to Warner Brothers, talks to Mattel, and puts it together. And then she gets to choose the writer, director, Greta Gerwig. She gets to be the lead. She gets to cast people. Like, she's in charge because she said, I'm the momentum for this project. Well, why not do that right now? Like, maybe you just finished a feature or a short film as an actor. Why not just do that earlier, where you're saying, here's the next thing I want to do as an actor? I guarantee if an actor here at the festival who had a project started talking to everybody and said, oh, you directed that short film. I would love to talk about doing something together. Maybe it's a day shoot, or maybe it's something, but like, let's get a couple of people together. Like, you could definitely do that. But it's the producer that has the momentum a lot of times. So whether it's the writer, director, or the actor, or whoever, you have to have that element in play. But I think it comes to answer your question maybe deeper is to say, it goes back to that idea of supply and demand. And I always try to talk in terms of like business to filmmakers and creatives, because that's the part we're always struggling with. That's what this book is about. Like, that's what I feel is the most valuable thing I can put out in the world, sitting on a stage with a microphone, is like helping you think about how business actually works. Because you are a business, whether you're a solo writer, director, producer, or a cinematographer, or an actor, or an editor, you are a business. And supply and demand is very basic, like economics 101 type stuff, but we need to put it into terms we can understand. So it's understanding that there are producers out there who have a demand for things, and seeking out where the demand is, and then seeing how you can fill that with your projects. So I don't remember if the question was like, how do you connect with them, or like why they don't exist, but I think it's because we're often thinking about permission rather than partnership. So if you're partnering with the producer, you're saying, I have the thing that you want and you have the thing that I want, so let's come together and partner. And that's what me and Garrett was, right? Yes, I got paid a producer fee, but ultimately before any of that was discussed, it was, here's a project I'm gonna do next. Do you wanna be a part of it? Because I want your producing skill and you want a good project to attach your name to. Great, partnership, success. So it's thinking in terms of what's the supply and demand balance on either side. And something else to think about is somebody woke up today with an abundance of the thing that you lack, whether that's money, time, equipment, pretty face that can be on camera, whatever it is, right? Someone woke up today with an abundance of the thing you lack, which also means that you woke up today with an abundance of something someone else lacks. And you got to think about that in terms of the value you already have, not just in yourself and inherently, but like with the projects you're creating. And then it becomes about seeking out who already has the demand for that, rather than, will somebody please take a look at my project, please? And then you're barking up 1,000 trees that never will get you anywhere. Did that answer your question? Okay. I can talk. I can get in the weeds on stuff. Okay. Other questions? Yeah, down here and then there. I think these are going to be the last two. Michelle, I'll keep my answer to like 2 minutes. I know you need the rooms.
Hi, Darren. My name is Spencer White. We talked.
Spencer, hey man, yeah, how's it going?
See you again.
Same.
So going off of this domino analogy that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
So if you have dominoes and they're angled a little wrong, then it can stop that momentum. What would you say are some pitfalls you've seen from the industry and people around you that stop that momentum and the domino effect?
That's a good question. I think you can prevent it by lining up the domino before you knock over the first wheel, right? So you're constantly playing this game of what's next, what's in the trajectory of this domino. And if it looks like it's going to fall a little off, then it's like, well, how do we shift that thing to get into the line, into the trajectory of the domino that's currently got some momentum? So like the ideas that come to mind for me are like starting a movie, greenlighting a movie, and you have that momentum of, okay, we're going into production, and then there's no distribution plan. To me, that's a huge domino that should be right next to it, but it's often not. And yet, for my film fund, for example, I have distribution and foreign sales and digital sales lined up before the movies have even been chosen. Like before I even have all the money, I'm lining up that distribution domino right now because I know that has to be in place, for the momentum to go, right? A lot of people look at a domino from the outside and they go, well, that's a great domino you're about to knock over, but there's nothing after it. It's like, okay. I love this. There was a friend of mine who said that investors like to invest in lines, not dots. So putting it into this context of the domino theory, people like to invest in a line of dominoes just so they can see, oh, this is the 2-inch one, but I can see the 6-foot one, and that's exciting to me. So I'm going to come in now. I've had an investor tell me that exact thing. I see where you're at now, and I see where you're going, and I want to be on that journey. So I'm investing now, even though it's riskier than investing 10 years from now. Awesome. Come on in, right? So it's thinking about how if a domino is already falling, if you're getting some momentum somewhere, you better hurry and make sure that next domino is lined up. I don't think it's a fixed state thing. I don't think it's like, oh shoot, this domino's falling and that one's over there, I'm screwed, and the momentum's going to be gone. I think until the very last second, you can move this domino over, and honestly, you could probably even pick the one up that just fell and just put another one there and go, okay, think, and like pick it up where it came from. That's how I like to think about it, visually at least. So you can always kind of adjust or nudge or push the next domino into place so it's going to fall where you need to. Yeah? Helpful?
Thank you.
Okay. And then right here, that'll be our last one, I think.
Thank you. I've loved everything you've said so far.
Thanks. Tell me your name real quick.
Abel Donnelly.
Awesome.
And actually, I think we've met on Zoom once.
Oh, nice.
Great job. I'll tell you about it later. But I was wondering, do you see yourself sticking to Utah, or is your vision bigger, growing this truly independent to the nation, eventually international? What's your, bigger domino there?
Cape Town wrecked me, man. Like, it is so awesome out there. It's beautiful. Everything that we shot in the Carpenter is within an hour radius. So like mountains and beach and sets and studios, like it was all there. And bigger tax incentive, like it was a 35% tax incentive instead of 20 or 25% here. We had a 120 person crew on a budget that would have got us a 35 to 40 person crew here. So the facilities, the equipment, the amount of time, like we were able to shoot 26 days. It would have been like a 15 to 17 day shoot here. Like just everything was bigger and better because of the exchange rate, because of just the way it is. And so, man, it's hard because I love Utah and I want to support and build Utah, but there's also the business reality that I have to be cognizant of because I'm now a steward of people's money and I have to make good investment decisions. So if I'm looking at a project and going, well, this is going to be shot on a stage. Stages are the same everywhere. Like, it doesn't matter where you film it. Sorry, Michelle, play yours. But like, if I can do it here, I want to, because I live here. I can go home every night. You know, I've worked at the stages and I love the stage and I love Marshall and I love the people there and I love the crew here. But as a executive producer making financial decisions for a film fund, I need to be thinking about, well, if it's 40% over there or 40 plus 10 plus 5 because of whatever it is in Canada or Australia or London or Italy or South Africa, I have to consider those. And then it's on me to say, okay, if I really want to shoot in Utah, I've got to exert the leverage that I have to say, look, here's the reality of filming there. So I need whatever I need to make it worthwhile. And so I can't say for certain that every project we do will be shot here in Utah. I would love for that to be the case, but I think legislature and film incentive has to come up to be competitive with what else is out there right now. Other than that, I love the crews, love the locations, love filming here. It's just going to be hard financially to blanket statements say, yes, I'm filming every project in Utah. Follow-up questions? Just kidding.
No, I have a question.
Okay, I think we're at time. Thank you all so much. Please do us a favor, share the photos
I
online.
got a question for you. You're not going to shut me down right now.
Okay.
And actually, it's not about. I understand the business of making film, absolutely, and I appreciate you doing that. And I think that Candlelight Media Group, they show that case that you're pointing. My question to you is, if I'm putting on my marketing hat, and that's the sandbox that I play in. There's so many times where filmmakers will come to me and they've finished a project, and they're like, "What do I do with it?" And I don't feel like there's enough conversation that happens in the writing stage, the pre-production stage. So what would you say about knowing the audience that you're marketing to, not just distribution, that's its own conversation, but the marketing aspect of your film and the...
Yeah, in the very first conversation between a writer, director, and a producer, whether that's 2 people or 3 people or whatever, you should also add a marketer, like in the very first conversation of what this project is. And that marketing lead is as essential as the producer, as the director, as the lead actor. That's my opinion about marketing. Like, it has to start day one. And before you go into development, or part of development needs to be, what is the poster? Who is the audience for this thing? What is the hook that's going to get them to follow along and have demand for this product that we're selling a year and a half from now? Because if you show up 2 weeks out from theatrical release and you're self-releasing on 20 screens and you haven't been talking about your movie for the last year and a half, you missed all the free marketing that you get to do. Because now you have to buy people's attention by running ads and buying billboards and radio spots and whatever it is. And that costs a lot of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, if you're making $1 million movie, your marketing budget should be half of that, like $500K spread over a year and a half to acquire the audience that's going to show up opening weekend and sell that out and bring their friends and their family. So marketing is day one with script, financing, team, key crew people. Marketing has to be part of that conversation. And if that will help you so many ways. It'll help you understand who the audience is, and you can start talking to them today. Hey, here's a picture of us with this project that we just greenlit ourselves. We don't have financing yet, but we greenlit it ourselves. This is our next project. Now you got 4 or 5 people posting about it every day online. And whether it's 500 or 500,000 people that audience reaches, well, guess what? Now you're going to add an actor and they have 10,000 followers or 100,000 followers. Now you're going to add a key grip who has 400 followers. And now you're going to add, right? So as the crew comes along, they're your marketing team for free. And my goodness, you would know better than me, but I don't understand the whole, like, don't post about this movie online when we're filming it. Why wouldn't you? My goodness, you got 100 people there that could be posting about it every day because they're working on it. And that's tens of thousands of impressions and engagements. And you give everybody a very simple call to action to put in their bio or at the end of every post, go follow along at xyzmovie.com. And now you're building an email list and you're building awareness, you're capturing people's zip codes, and you're saying, I mean, my goodness, that's why we did the podcast. And when we launched theatrical, we sent out an email saying, let us know where you want us to put the movie. And then that all funneled to Purdy Distribution and helped us with what theaters we needed to book, because we had the audience already to know where the demand was so we could fill that demand. Okay, this is I could get on that soapbox for an entire episode. I probably have, but marketing is essential.
Thank you.
Yeah. So is PR. It's part of marketing. Okay. Yeah. Thank you all so much. Subscribe to Truly Independent. Come find me. I'll be in the lobby afterwards for a few hours if you have other questions. Thank you for watching, for listening. Thanks for having us, for having me and Garrett and Spirit. This is very cool that you guys put on a festival where things like this can happen. So thank you all so much.